In the latest escalation of the genocidal war on Gaza, the Israeli occupation army has unleashed a new wave of horrific attacks, killing dozens of Palestinians overnight, many of them children, as Israel's leadership openly vows to take control of all territories of the Strip and forcibly displace its population. Humanitarian organizations warn that 2 million Palestinians are starving. Meanwhile, the UK has announced sanctions on Israel over its violence in Gaza and suspended trade negotiations with the occupying state. This announcement followed a forceful joint condemnation of Israel's conduct in Gaza, calling its actions egregious by the leaders of Canada, France and the UK. The Israeli authorities told aid agencies that 100 trucks of aid per day would be allowed into Gaza, and Netanyahu admitted that limited aid was resumed just to avoid diplomatic backlash, while French foreign minister said the number of trucks that Israel will allow is totally insufficient. As European pressure mounts, will it translate into meaningful consequences for the Israel and an end to its crimes? I'm Hani Saif, and let's find out in Focus. Welcome back. Israel showed no sign of responding to calls from its allies to halt its new military offensive in Gaza, as health officials reported that airstrikes killed over 80 Palestinians overnight. According to the Washington Post, Israel has agreed to allow a minimal amount of aid into the territory, following a nearly 3-month blockade that had prevented the entry of food, medicine, fuel, and other essential goods. The blockade has prompted warnings from food experts about an impending risk of famine. Criticism of Israel's actions has intensified in recent days, with allies such as Canada, France, and the United Kingdom threatening concrete action, including potential sanctions, and urging Israel to ease its egregious new military campaign in Gaza. And for more analysis, we are joined from Jenin by Mr. Samir Abahra, the political analyst. Welcome, Mr. Abahra. Israeli airstrikes killed dozens of people overnight, including children in the school-turned shelter. These attacks reflect the pattern of Israel's ongoing strategy to target displaced civilians.
Good evening to you and to your audiences. Yes, Israel has already ramped up its genocidal war against the Palestinian people in the West Bank. And the Israeli mercenaries do not differentiate between senior people, children, or women. All the segmentations of the people in Palestine affected by the military Israeli strategy that led the Democratic Party's chief to criticize Netanyahu and the Israeli army by killing children, and also led in a very outrageous reaction militarily by attacking Yehud Kelan, all the Likud members that will affect the Israeli state and to be subject to be accountable under the international law. This had happened previously. So why the history did not held Israel accountable for that and should be before the international community, and even the US has already stated by strong languages to end the war and indicated that with this threat the Israeli position, and also would lead to the ties deterioration between America and Israel. What's happening in Gaza that lead the mobilization in the level of Europe, such as France, Canada, and UK, and a call upon to several or other European countries to join, threatening to suspend the partnership with Israel if the genocidal war to continue, and requested to Israel to implement and abide the international humanitarian law. And Israel is also taken standards of the international humanitarian law to use as weapon against Israel. So this
Mr. Abara, criticism against Israel's conduct in Gaza came also from inside of the country, with Yair Golan, a leader of Israel's center-left politics, saying that Israel was becoming an outcast among nations and killing babies as a hobby because of the government's approach to the war. How significant are such internal critiques, and could they shift public opinion or policy?
Yes, it is a breakthrough that is coming within the Israeli politicians, such as the chief of Democrats, and it has a political position here that would lead to the shift of the international communities. Also, this also might lead to increase the demobilization and the pressure again upon Israel by the international community, as well as the peoples of these countries. A public political pressure should take place even by the human rights and the legal organization to pressure Israel. Should this also be presented within Europe? We've seen in Netherlands around 100,000 people of Netherlands took to the street condemning Israel. This also might go forward in other countries. Yes, this might lead such a shocking statement to pressure Netanyahu and to sit back of his policies and to stop the war of genocide against the Palestinian people.
Well, Netanyahu admitted that, aid was has resumed to prevent negative media coverage and to avoid the diplomatic backlash over the images of mass starvation. How does this cynical statement reflect Israel's use of famine and starvation as weapons of war?
Based on my estimation, that starvation and even famine is weapons of war. Israel has already arranged the distributions of aid as they have in militarily motivations, even though that they are not enough for the people, and the people would have to wait for long queues waiting for the distribution. In the meantime, there is a full shortage, or rather the complete bombardment on the Gaza from the land and the air. and they also might harm the trucks of aid, and Israel is doing so the fear of falling these aid in the hands of Gaza.
Sir, Netanyahu declared that Israel will take full control of Gaza. What does this reveal about the real objectives of this war, and how do you interpret this in the context of forced displacement and occupation?
Netanyahu has only one goal through his own campaign, calling Israel to release the captives and the elimination of Hamas and handed over their arm. And I think the matter is completely political, that is even related to the future of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. Netanyahu is endeavoring to undermine the Palestinian cause along with the two-state solutions. I wish to speak frankly. Netanyahu's country do not wish the full release of the Israeli captives. The process, as he claimed, that his own goal, even if the captives were released and Netanyahu continue in his campaign, the international community will demand him as his goal has been achieved to end the war. But this even Netanyahu did not want, but wanted to resume his own war on the Gaza Strip. Forcibly displacement for the Palestinians, along with killing them. This is his own goal in order to eliminate the proposal of the two-state solution. This is his own strategic goal, along with Israel, not to release the captives. The captives will ultimately be relieved under the agreement to be implemented, but Netanyahu then will be ending will be achieving his ultimate goal to eliminate and liquidate the Palestinian cause.
Well, sir, despite the growing international condemnation, Israel continues its war, lets humanitarian aid in upon its own decision. Do you see this as a failure of global institutions?
Certainly, as you've already mentioned, that Israel's only searching for political and security goals, not to solve the issues of the Gaza Strip by entering the aid. The aids were blockaded throughout 2 months that led the children to die because of hunger. Israel also started to resume the aid under the security motivations, and even though such aids are very limited, won't solve the problem of the children affected by shortage of food and the risks of famine. It's only by the international community pressure to enter such aids.
That was Mr. Samira Bahradi, political analyst. Thank you very much, sir, for your insights. And just hours ago, the UK has imposed additional sanctions on Israel and suspended trade talks, significantly escalating its response to the violence in Gaza. As reported by The Independent, UK Foreign Secretary David Lammy condemned what he called a morally unjustifiable escalation by Israel, announcing new measures aimed at increasing pressure on Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. The move came just hours after the UK, Canada and France warned they would take concrete actions against Israel. Meanwhile, French Foreign Minister Jean-Noël Barrot criticized the Israeli government's blind violence in Gaza, saying it has turned the Palestinian territory into a place of death. And to shed more light, we're joined from Paris by Dr. Majid Boudain, the international law professor. Dr. Boudain, welcome to Q News. Now,
Welcome.
Britain has imposed sanctions on Israel and summoned the Israeli ambassador over Gaza. From a legal standpoint, how significant are these actions in establishing accountability under international law?
Well, this is a very important measure because international law without application and without accountability doesn't mean anything. So the reason to establish and to agree on these rules and of international law is that they have the target, the aim, the object to be made applicable and to obtain accountability and to fight impunity. So this is very important. What now the EU is doing and the UK and Canada is a very important move toward this this achievement.
Mm-hmm. Well, the UK government explicitly said that using food as a weapon in Gaza is unacceptable and illegal. Now, under international law, could this constitute as a war crime? And how do you assess this shift in the stance of the UK towards Israel?
The international community, and particularly the countries like the UK, like the EU countries, like the US, like other countries, they were supplying Israel with weapons of massive destruction of the population in Gaza. So they can be sued for this support of the crime, of these massive crimes. They have recognized that there is a crime, that there is a war crime. It could be a genocide, and there are all the elements constituting a genocide are met here. So we are in democratic countries. We are in a state of law countries. They apply the rule of law. They cannot, before their own courts and before international court, they cannot avoid to ask themselves the question whether they could be liable or not of that, and they could be liable. So they have taken a wise decision, even if it's a little bit late, that they have to move toward putting sanctions against Israel and to cut the supply with arms and to cut this link to avoid liability and responsibility. And this is why they are moving this way. And this is a good achievement. It's a positive achievement today because it make Netanyahu think twice. We have seen that Trump himself, President Trump, did not consult Netanyahu to obtain the freeing of the American Israeli hostage these days. He did not consult Netanyahu when he agreed with to obtain that the ships in Bab el-Mandab in the Red Sea will not be the target from the Houthis and others. So they negotiated with Hamas, they negotiated with the Houthis, they're negotiating with Iran, and they did not have any consultation or approval from Netanyahu. So it means that even Trump, who is very close to Netanyahu, at a certain time he could put a distance. With the UK and with the European Union, there is public opinion which is very strong now. There is the rule of law is very strong, and they cannot continue that way. And this is why they have taken this decision. And when we see what is the next step, now they are asking after Holland, the Netherlands, when they have asked to examine the agreement between the EU and Israel.
Yes. Well, Dr. Boudin, Canada, France, and the UK have jointly condemned Israel's egregious actions. How unprecedented is this level of European condemnation to Israel? What does it signal about shifting Western alliances? They spoke about taking concrete actions. What sort of actions could they be, and will they be able to hold Israel accountable truly?
I think they are going this way, and first of all, you will see there is a very practical acts here. Now the EU is called by the Netherlands, by France, and by other countries, Spain, Ireland, and other countries. They are called to review, to re-examine the agreement, the friendship agreement and the cooperation agreement between EU and Israel. What is this agreement? This agreement is organizing the relations between the two entities, between EU, the 27 countries of the EU, and Israel. And there is Article 2, who said that both parties must respect human rights. And EU is saying that Israel is not respecting the human rights in Gaza and in the West Bank and in East Jerusalem. So here there is a shifting in the position, and that's very important. And the consequences here is that Article 2 will lead to an eventual suspension of the agreement. What does it mean? The agreement has these diplomatic aspect, political aspect, human rights aspect, and economic and commercial and financial aspect. Suspending the agreement means that the EU will suspend all the cooperation with Israel, the financial cooperation, the subsidies, all type of cooperation, and to admit goods from Israel without duties and all these arrangements which are favorable to Israel. And this is a very strong weapon. Now, the EU is acting as like, and it's going this way against Putin, because they have seen that what Putin is doing in Ukraine, Netanyahu is doing in Palestine. So they have to avoid to not make application of international law in Gaza.
Well, Dr. Boudin, I'm sorry to interrupt. We are running out of time, so I have to ask you this final question. The UN has confirmed that 5 trucks of aid that were allowed into Gaza didn't reach those in need. What does this tell us about the manipulation of the humanitarian access by the occupation army? The occupation army allows some trucks in, however, they're not reaching those in need.
Yeah, but this is first of all, from the quantity aspect, it's a small drop in a notion of need. They have made starve all 2 million plus population, and now they are talking about a drop, and they are making a huge fuss about it. While now Trump is putting pressure on that, because he's in need to do that, and if not, he will lose a lot in the region, and they are putting this pressure, and it's possible that it's more probable than not that Netanyahu will open the doors, at least for a while. But on the other side, he is thinking that he still have this immunity and impunity, and he doesn't want to do it. So he is playing a game back and forth, because he wants to have a full occupation of Gaza, to destroy the area, to destroy the whole strip, and to go into his way. But I believe now the international community cannot follow him as before, and they will take action. And this is the first action like what the EU is starting to do now.
Hopefully so. Dr. Majida Boudin, the international law professor, thank you very much, sir, for joining us here on Q News. Well, this concludes today's episode of In Focus. We will be following to see if the European stance does translate into concrete actions or just merely political rhetoric. That's all for now. I'm Henny Saif. Thank you for joining us.